right, we need base runners. Let's go.
Welcome to the podcast, everybody. Dave and Charlie back at you once more. Today we are talking one of the hottest topics along there with pitch count, which would be guest playing, guest players. Oh my gosh, Charlie, there's so many aspects to this one. We are facing it this fall, I think, more than I've ever seen it. You think you're signed up against a team to play, and then you look up on the roster, there's at least one or two extras, and you really don't know who you're playing. It's kind of crazy. So we thought we'd dive into this, kind of see both sides of it. I've got my opinions. I'll try to be open-minded tonight, Charlie.
I bet we're on the same page, though.
I don't know. It's we'll get into it. So as far as there's a lot of different ways we can go. How do you see this thing split up, and how can we make the most sense out of it in the next 45 minutes?
Well, I think you could talk about guest play from a team perspective, and as in when does a team bring in guest players and why, and how do they use those players. You could talk about it from a parent perspective, when to have your kid guest play, when to let him guest play. And I think you could talk about it from a coach perspective, as in, how do you feel about your players guest playing on weeks that you've scheduled an off week? So why don't we start with as a team? When do you bring in guest players?
Let's start as a team. When do you bring in guest players? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Well, you start that off. When do we bring in guest players?
I think there's two legitimate reasons to have guest players, and the second one is probably a gray area for most people. The first one is you just can't field a team without guest players. You have injuries, you have kids playing other sports, you have kids with some other obligation, family obligation or something, and then you bring in a guest player so you can play the tournament. The second reason is because it's a soft tryout. And I think that's perfectly fine as long as everyone is honest about what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we've been at this 4 years. We've had 3 guest players, and each was a soft tryout.
Exactly.
2 didn't work out, 1 did. So yeah. I totally get the value in that. You get to understand that the kids get to be around each other in a different environment and pressure environment, and the parents and everything else. So I think that's a legitimate reason. I think, to fill out the roster. And, I was really kind of thinking ahead going into this, like, you really don't need to fill out more than 9 players. But that's kind of hardcore because you are going to have injuries. Catchers do need to rest. So I've settled on 10. Like, I think having a guest player be the 10th player, that's where I landed it on. I don't know how you feel about it.
Yeah, I think if the guest player is the 10th player, but if you have a guest player and you have 11 or 12, why do you have guest players? Except that you're trying to put a team on the field that's better than the team you would have without the guest player.
Well, there's no question in my mind. If you have a guest player that takes your total roster to more than 10, like you said, 11 or 12, you're there. An adult is there to win a game.
Right, exactly. Because you don't need that player at that point to field your team. Well, you might need him to win.
You might need him to win. You might need more pitching on your team. And by God, this guy's a good pitcher over here, so let's go ahead and have him throw. Boy, he'll probably win the first game on Sunday for us. It's not really your player. It's not really your team, but if that makes you feel better.
And it seems particularly egregious in the fall, which is crazy to me because, and I guess that's just because everyone's team is playing in the spring, so there's not as many guest players available. But the fall really is your development for the spring. You know what I mean? So if you're bringing in a kid to guest play and he's your bracket day pitcher and pitches the entire game on Sunday, game 1, that's a lost opportunity for you to develop your own player.
You remember our first episode tryout season, and we talked about how important the communication was between coaches and parents when they're trying out for teams and what to ask. Do you guest play? What's your guest playing policy? And they should be able to answer that too. I know there's some parents I've talked to this year that were upset. They showed up to a game. There was couple of guest players, and their kid was sitting on the bench, and they were paying money to an academy monthly. And I wouldn't be happy about it either if that's the case, because everyone sells their team as development, which we've talked about a couple of times on here, right? So, hey, I'm going to develop your kids for high school baseball. That's on some people's things. I'm going to develop them just to be the best, player they can be. And then you bring in extra kids just to pitch to win games, and your kid sits the bench, or just another kid on the team who's a marginal pitcher needs reps. That's not development anymore. So that's why I have a real problem with it. And it is in the fall here, kind of the wild, wild west, because less teams are playing, so more kids are available. And, here we go. And we're going to see it again this weekend, all weekend long.
Yeah. And apart from just pitching, too, you'll see a lot of teams guest play kids, and those kids will bat in the top of the lineup. The top of the lineup gets the most at-bats on the weekend. So you should have your kids getting the most at-bats they possibly can. Even if that guest player is your 10th player, batting him in the top of the lineup only helps him. It doesn't help you or your team. Well, it might help you win, I guess.
It'll help. That's the only reason to do it. It helps you win. And then if that's the case, I'm pretty sure that if we ask all of our kids, do you want to play less?
Right.
I don't think that's their answer. I'm not sure it's most of the parents that pay money monthly and sometimes thousands of dollars for the year, most of them thousands of dollars for the year, to develop their kid, but then they're sitting on the bench or they're batting, 7th or 8th or 9th, and some, a couple of guest players are batting 1, 2. We've seen it already this year in all age groups, not just ours.
But it does seem like there's a lot in ours, and I don't know why it's particularly like that. I don't know.
Yeah. So I'm gonna read this here from you sent this to me. The USSSA statement on guest playing. And they give what you have to do and your ages and things like that. And then it says down here on subset B, guest players are used to help field a team and not a mechanism to enhance the competitive balance of a team. Oops.
That's the funniest thing I've ever read related
I don't
to
think
travel
that's
baseball.
being enforced.
And you could enforce it. It wouldn't be that hard, because all you would have to do is approve the guest players. And so if a team has 10 players on their roster and they want to bring in 2 guest players from a higher team, a better team, they should have to say, these 2 kids on my roster aren't going to be there, so I need these 2 kids to fill. You should have to justify it, basically, instead of it just being automatic.
It's automatic. Last year in state, there was a guy who took advantage of it and added 3 guest players. They didn't win state, but boy, he was going to try. But was that really his team? And that's where, okay, let's stay as a team. I'm going to start going in circles on this as a coach because it drives me crazy. But
right.
Okay, as a team, when is the right time to add? Do we want to talk anything else about the team aspect?
Well, yeah, I guess we don't need to really talk about the wrong reasons for adding a guest player. I guess that's obvious. Just to try to win, or to try to wine and dine a family and steal them from their team.
Oh, there's that going on last week, this weekend. Oh, yeah. I know it for
recruiting.
A fact. Mm-hmm.
The recruiting in travel ball is worse than college football.
It absolutely
the recruiting.
Is. Hey, why don't you just come play with us? Come on, just try us out. It's fine.
You can bat fourth. You can play whatever position you want.
Yeah.
So how about as a player?
As a player,
I don't think your son has ever guest played.
Nope.
Yeah, my son has only guest played once, and I think it was for one of these reasons, which I enumerated, which was he was just asked to. They wanted an extra player for state, and we were done playing. We weren't going to play anymore that season, so we said yes. I expected him to bat at the bottom of the lineup and sit the bench quite a bit and do that the whole time, and that's what happened, and that was fine, and it was a cool experience. But it was at the end of the season, and we were asked to do it. We didn't go advertising for it.
There's a lot of advertisements on Facebook.
Yeah. We saw one the other day that was a guy willing to travel to 3 different states for
Three
opportunity
states. We'll travel 3 states to have our kid play.
with any old team who asks.
Yeah. Let's. I'm going to try to be nice tonight. Let's find the positives for the player in doing that. What positive experience did your son Dylan have by playing with another team? Because I know there's that too.
Yeah, Dylan is the kind of kid that's like, he loves to be around other kids. He's a very social kid. And so he really enjoyed meeting all those players and hanging out with them for the weekend and playing with new kids. So he enjoyed that aspect of it. And he just also, he likes to play baseball. So you get that too. You get an extra weekend of getting to play. I think those are probably the two main ones. You also get, you know, your kid gets exposed to some different coaching, which can be positive or negative, but I think it's usually positive.
Well, even if it's not something that he wants to take with him in the future,
Exactly.
he's exposed to it, or
Yeah,
yeah, sure,
exposed to a different style of coaching, a different style of in-game coaching.
Mm-hmm.
I think all those things are positive for the player.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I don't think all this is bad. I just think when it's done for the wrong reasons, it can. I just don't think it's great.
What about the negatives for a player?
Well, I think it depends on how often it's happening.
Yeah.
Is really for me when I was looking at that question. The negative, it's, I mean, if you're playing every single weekend, and there are some of the kids who do that, you're going to get worn out. And not just physically and mentally, but like, I mean, well, I guess those are the two main things, but I mean, your arm will get worn out.
Exactly.
Just high leverage throws. We, back to Bobby Pritchett on here, even high level throws. I saw a kid that guest plays every weekend. He usually doesn't catch, but he picked up with another team and was catching. And I'm like, man, he's just firing balls down to second base and high leverage throws. And they may think he didn't pitch that weekend, but he's sure working his arm out.
Yeah.
If you don't have someone that's an absolute gatekeeper for your son's pitch count and arm care, it could really get carried away. And so I think that's a negative.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably the biggest one, I would say, is
The
just the
pitch count
arm.
situation is the biggest problem with guest playing.
It's the biggest problem in travel baseball.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, yeah. But if you're guest playing, I mean, as we know, most parents, I would say the vast majority of parents don't know anything about pitch counts. They have no idea what a pitch count that's too high is. I think if you polled the parents on our team, they wouldn't know. Most of them.
Yeah. So back to when Bobby was on here, we were talking about, is it okay to kind of hit that top mark of what he recommends pitching for the weekend? You asked him a question during that episode, and it was something along the lines of, but does that also make you more comfortable at that top end of number of pitches if you know he's not pitching the next weekend?
Exactly.
And he's like, oh, yes.
Exactly. So as a coach, you're pitching your player at the top end of his pitch count.
Because you're not playing the next weekend.
And maybe you're thinking, last week was the last week for a lot of teams. You know what I mean? Like a lot of teams ended their season last week. We still have 3 weeks of tournaments left, or 2 weeks of tournaments left. So maybe you let your guy go 80 or 90 in a game thinking he's got the entire fall and winter off. But he's coming around right back next week and guest playing and pitching.
Yeah, we got to have keepers of the arms, and that's got to be the parent, because now you're getting into coach, guest coach, the pitching coach, 3 different people in there. The parent has to be involved, so that could be the negative for the player, I think. Let's talk about coaching a little bit. Here was my view on it when we first started the team, and it's morphed and changed a little bit. For me, we were coming in to 9U with a bunch of rec league kids who really needed to learn and know baseball, because they hadn't done anything other than sign up for rec league in fall and spring, and that was it. And they'd go home. So we were not going to allow guest playing at that age because they needed to be there at practice because we needed to get some IQ in them, we needed to get some reps in them, and things like that. And then we kind of kept that mentality up. I'm not sure we actually put like just an absolute mandate on it. We just talked to parents, said, listen, we really need to be here if we're going to try to get better. And all the parents were all in on it. So we've never had anybody mid-season, guest play anywhere. And I think it helps because as a coach, there's a couple of things. One, we're sitting there on Sundays and now we have 3-hour practices, and it's to try to make them mentally tough and push them at the end. And then, they're sitting there and the team's practicing and they're like, hey, where's Bobby? And, Bobby's picking up playing somewhere. How come he's not running in the, 2 hour and 50th minute of practice, as we're challenging them to get better, and we say things to them, and all coaches do say, hey, let's play for each other. We're a team. We're brothers. You got to fight for each other. It's not about you. Oh, but Bobby is going to go do his own thing this weekend.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And so to me, it's really hard to build the team atmosphere if the guy doesn't want to be there for practice with his team. Like, are you on a team or you just want to guest play? And I'm not going to be snotty about it, because if that's what somebody wants out of the experience, then, that's more power to you. But for those that want to be on a team, they want to be on a team. And it's hard to have a team when you got 1 or 2 players that want to leave all the time and you can't have a complete practice, or you can't work on, defensive plays. When the runners are on base, we're trying to do signals and try to, fake everybody out and do everything everybody does. And oops, we can't run that play because now Bobby's back and he's at shortstop, but he wasn't here for the play.
Exactly. Or full team situations.
Full team situations.
And that's so much of, like, once you get to be 11 or 12 and up, that's so much of practice. It's not about doing drills, learning how to pitch and hit and field. They know all that stuff. You have to practice it, of course, but the bulk of practice is the mental aspect of the game.
Yeah, I want to come back to that. The other thing I'll throw in front of it is, as a coach, is if we had guest players come in to play on our team, and believe me, there's been, a lot of games, a lot of years where if you told me you could have a couple of kids come in and pitch really well, I'd be like, okay, that'd be really good, thanks. But if you just have someone to come in to play, how can I look at my team and say play for each other?
Right, exactly.
I can't.
Yeah.
How can I look at a kid and say, I'm here to develop you, but sit on the bench while this other kid plays? But why am I on the bench? Nobody's sick. Well, he's good.
Yeah. Or a kid that's only been able to pitch 2 innings this fall has to sit there and watch some kid pitch 5 innings that's not even on his team. And yeah, maybe he knows he's not as good as that other player, but how's he going to get better?
And it's the fall too, on top of it. I don't
That's
think it's
when
right.
You're supposed to develop.
Man, we didn't see a lot of that happen last week. We saw a lot of guest pitchers pitching. The other thing for me is I would have a hard time looking at a parent who's paying dues and saying to them, hey, I'm going to try to develop your kid as much as we can in a team, because back to your point, we'll get to in a minute, a lot of development as you get older is your individual work. But I can't sit their kid and play somebody else if it's purely just for wins and losses. Like I said, we had 3 soft tryouts, so to speak. Everybody knew it. That's part of the game. But man, I can't look at those parents. And if I was a parent and I showed up to the ballpark and my kid was sitting and a guest player was playing just because the coach wanted a air quote better player out there, I would finish out the season, but I would have that conversation with him as soon as the game's over that, what's the policy moving forward? If this happens again, we're leaving, or if this is going to happen again, we're leaving, and teach the kid to suck it up and get through it. But there's no way I would be staying for that, because if you don't think that much of my son to develop him, then he doesn't need to be here.
Well, I think what you're saying as a coach in that situation is really that kid that's sitting is not good enough to be on your team.
That's exactly what it's saying.
You just want his money. You are not capable of coaching him up to a level that you want him to play at.
Or you had to take him to fill out the roster because your tryouts didn't go the way you wanted, because everybody's trying out 12 different teams every year now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've taken the kid for some reason, but you really don't want him. So
Right. And I don't think any parents look positively on guest players unless it's a situation where you literally can't field a team without a couple of guest players. And then I'm sure they're just grateful to have a spot for their kid to play. But I think if you, as a parent, not only are you paying to be on the team and in the tournament, and you may be paying a facility fee or academy dues, you may be paying for lessons, and you bring your kid to practice twice a week, every week. And here's this other kid who's never even been to practice, probably playing over your kid.
not a fan.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take on it. And I'm sure there's some people out here that have a different opinion. And I would go back to this. If a coach is open about it and they say, this is what we're going to do. Yes, at times we are going to bring in guest players. That's just what we do here. You got to be okay with it. And if the parent says, okay, then they went into it, together. So I guess I'm not saying that, fundamentally it's the worst thing in the world, but I don't think that's how it's really presented to most parents when the teams forms.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna, hey, thank you for your $300 a month. Now here's your pitching lessons and here's your batting lessons on top of that. And in a couple of weeks, we're gonna have to ask him to sit a couple innings.
Yeah. I don't know how you honestly, as a coach, even take that to your parents in an honest way when you're gonna do pickup players for just competitive reasons. I don't know how do you say that? I don't know how you say that to the parents.
I
That
think the only way
your kids aren't good enough. We need better kids because we want to win.
I think that's the only way, which is really hard because who's going to say that, right?
Yeah.
So the only way that it's okay in my book, if the coach says, okay, this is our team. Now listen, we're a competitive team and we're out for wins. So occasionally we are going to bring in some hired guns,
Right.
and that means that a couple of the kids are going to sit during those weeks. And if a parent is okay with that, I can't. I mean, that's their prerogative.
Yeah, I think what probably happens most of the time is that the coach doesn't even talk to the parents about it. The parents just show up on game day.
No,
and there's some extra guys.
There's some dudes out there in the wrong colored jerseys and they don't fit right. And it's
never
like,
seen them before.
I don't know who they are.
Why is this kid 99 on the game changer?
A lot of times it's not. Hey, our extra jersey's 99 too.
Yeah, exactly.
It's universal.
You're 0 or you're 99.
Yeah, 99's playing. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. The question to me is, the spirit of the rule is to fill out your roster. I read that earlier from U-Trip, and I don't know about the other, game sevens or I don't know. We're registered for them for a tournament we never ended up playing, but I didn't read the guest playing rules. I read the pitch count rules. But I don't know how you would manage that to the spirit of the law because it's
how the organization would handle that.
Yeah, how could you honestly say what would you put in for a rule so that was not being abused and it was truly for roster filled?
I would say that your roster for a game, if you are using one or more guest players, is capped at 10. So what you have to either you have players that are missing and can't play, in which case you need to fill out your roster to 10 because you can play with 10. Or you're going to have to truly lie and just kick some of your kids off the team for the weekend and just
How would that feel? How would that feel?
Well, I mean, I think that would wake people up a little bit more to it.
Yeah, but what would be worse? Your kid's sitting on the bench for 2 or 3 innings every game,
or you can't even come to the game,
or you can't come this week.
I mean,
still pay me $300 at the end of the month.
I think there's organizations that do that. That they have a big roster on the team in small towns when there's only one team, and they say we're gonna travel 11. They're not gonna bring everybody that's rostered.
Yeah, I mean, if it's a small town and they're trying to form,
you gotta do what you gotta do.
That's fine. I mean,
but you don't want to sit for a kid that's not even coming to practice and not paying dues. Isn't on your team.
I'd be so angry as a parent. I
think that's what makes it so shocking how common it is. Like, I almost wish we had a guest on here who was all for it, who could defend the position.
Okay, so let's try to find our minds in that area. How could you defend that?
I want
If
my
you're
kid to
saying,
be on
because
a winning team.
every team, Charlie, says they're going to develop.
Yes.
You know, and some of them put on their statements when they're trying out teams. We are here to develop, to prepare your boys for high school baseball. But there's 2 guest players playing this weekend.
Right. So just to play devil's advocate, I guess the justification would be that you could say they need to develop learning how to win, like a winning attitude, and they need to win some games to be able to do that. You could say that if we have guest players, we'll play 5 games instead of 3 games. So
Okay.
everyone will get more at bats.
Sneaky.
You could say that your players could learn from the better players who have been developed by better coaches than you are.
We're going to develop your kids by bringing in other kids who have been developed somewhere else so they can see what to
This
do.
kid got some great coaching. Y'all listen to him, not me. I think you could say that. I think everyone knows that's a lie. And what you're really doing is just trying to win. Now, maybe you just say that. I want to win. I hate losing. I want my kid to win. I want my kid to be on a winning team.
Then you can't say you're there to develop all the kids on your team.
Yeah. And if you're looking for a team and they do say they're about development, and go back and look at their game changer and see how many kids in each game don't have a name. They just have a number. Those are guest players.
Wow, Charlie dropping the knowledge right here on Game Changer. She's sneaky, yo.
Pay for the Game Changer premium so you can look at everyone's box scores.
See how many times just a number. If Game Changer for your team or a team you're looking at has names for everybody except for when they have guest players, just look for the numbers.
Yeah,
and see how many times
Tommy, batting first, number 0 batting second, and playing shortstop, and pitching the last 2 innings. That's a guest player. So you can find out who's using guest players, and that doesn't go with development. I will say that you can use guest players legitimately, especially in the fall, if you have, especially once you get to 12 and up, if you have kids playing football or playing other sports, you may need guest players. But it is suspicious how often the guest player is the best player on the field for the other team.
No, you're not going to ask a horrible player to guest play, are you?
No. I mean, it just seems like the law of averages. They would usually be about the same level.
Yeah, and how do you judge if you need a guest player and you've reached out and asked around all your contacts and no one's available or willing to do it, and then you see the Facebook post and it's got the kid and they got pictures up on him and it may even say videos available upon request. And
like if I was gonna send videos of I would definitely send videos of like his 3 best hits.
Yeah, you're not sending
What if this is only 3 hits? His strikeout, the time he struck someone out, like his best plays ever made on defense. I mean, I don't know if what...
You know what I may do, Charlie? I may take Gavin's 3 worst swings ever.
Put him up
and Airy had in the outfield this year, and I'm going to post him and say, looking to pick up major last weekend.
Yeah, open level player. Great bat.
They always have to tell you what level player they are, and I guess to some degree that's accurate. I mean, you have to,
yeah, because you're saying he can't play in a AA tournament.
So, what positions are they the most that you see on the Facebook sites? When they say kids, he's a good hitter. He can. They all can pitch, and then they say usually plays blank.
Usually plays first. Or they'll say plays, if they're under 10, they'll say plays every position but catcher, which literally, people, is every 10-year-old. Do they understand? Like every 10-year-old can play every position but catcher.
Yeah.
Every single one.
Yeah.
And if they're on a good team, they do play a lot of every somebody should be playing a lot of positions at 10. But I get it. People are trying to agent their kid.
First base. I thought you would say shortstop, but now that I'm thinking about it, I do scroll a lot of those pages. I think first base is out there a lot. You're right.
Yeah, I think the shortstop's parents are probably content because their
Yeah,
kids play
maybe
shortstop.
you don't see a lot of plays left field and
Yeah,
bats eighth, looking to pick up and get better.
batting 200 this season, strikes out most of the
So
time.
I guess all the good players just want to guest play. Or
Yeah,
maybe
it makes sense.
yeah,
You know
it
what
does.
I would be? The thing that would really worry me about posting like that is that, you know, anyone can have a bad weekend. And even if your kid is good, what if he really stinks that weekend? And then the coach is going to be looking at you like, you said he was awesome. You said
Yeah,
he
and
was a
he's looking
great
at his
pitcher.
parent. He's looking at the kid he
Yeah,
just benched for 2 innings, going,
exactly.
"Sorry,
He's
Timmy. I
no
guess you
better
could
than
have
you.
played."
I watched 3 videos of hits. Figured
Yeah,
he could hit.
yeah. I don't think there's anything that we can actually do about any of it unless um, the governing body does something about it. Tournament directors are kind of held to those standards, so they can't do
Yeah.
anything about it. So um, I
I
don't
do think it's
know.
one of those things like pitch counts that's, you know, it's just part of travel ball. We probably just need to suck it up and accept it that we're going to roll out there in our game and face a team that's not really the team that's on paper. Well, I guess
I
that's something we haven't talked about either. Like the tournament director's making the schedule based on what he sees as the most competitive tournament. But he's not looking at who teams are adding for
That's a great
guest
point,
players.
Charlie. So last week we had Mike McEwen on from Arkansas Premier Baseball, and if you haven't heard that one, it's a great insight to how tournament directors look at things. And Mike was referring to what you were saying, Charlie, that when they look at that bracketing for pool play, or when they look at making pool play, they're trying to match up based on what they know about that team, records, if they're coming from out of town, the power rankings, things like that. But they know a lot of these teams, and so they're trying really hard to match up what's competitive opportunities. And you may have a really hard team. If you're a middle of the road team, you may have a really hard team, and you may have someone that's kind of like you. And you got to go fight it out. Maybe you can get 1-1. If you get lucky every now and then, you can go 2-0. If you're not playing well, you're at the bottom, but you still play on Sunday. How can a tournament director accurately match up teams if they're a AAA team's bringing in 2 major players? And there's no way that the tournament director knows that on the day he's making the pool play.
Because you can add
He
players
can
up
add
to
up to
3
Thursday.
hours
Oh,
before the first game.
I didn't know that rule.
Yeah.
3 hours before
I
the
think
first
that's what
game.
it says on that same sheet. It says 3 hours before the first game. So
That's
yeah, there's nothing you
bananas.
could do. So if you have a good AAA team and they add 2 major players, that's essentially a major team now.
They become a different team for sure.
So someone might have to play a major team that's better than them, which is expected every weekend in pool play. And then the team that's supposed to be the same as you is suddenly actually also a major team because they have guest players.
Well, we can't make excuses about it because the boys will feel that, and we don't say we're sorry for ourselves. We're just going to have to go out and do it, and
Yeah,
we'll be better
exactly.
for it on some level. And who
It's
knows? Maybe we'll pull off some wins. I'm sure not Debbie Downer and saying we can't win both games this week, but it is a little frustrating. I hadn't thought about it from the tournament director standpoint, but you're spot on there.
and
It's
I know a lot of people out there are saying, and I don't disagree with this necessarily, but they're saying, who cares? Just the team that you're facing across from you is who you should play. But we have these divisions for a reason, and it's so teams don't get their teeth kicked in every game.
That's right,
Because that's not fun.
It's not fun, and I think the hardest challenge for a AAA team is you're just coming out of AA, so you're okay.
Yeah.
But now you're sitting there in open tournaments, and there are very few AAA only. So you're playing major teams right off the bat, and it takes a while, and it takes some fortitude for these kids to stick with it with a positive attitude. And so when you get a chance for a win, or you get a chance for a competitive game, before you grow to major status, hopefully someday yourself, there is a growing period. There's a growth period, and you can mentally beat down a team. I'm not saying we're not. I don't think we're there, but I've talked to some moms on some teams that their teams just it's been a year, and I don't know if they're going to last, and they just keep getting beat by the better teams. Now, people would say, well, you have to get better or split up and go get on another team. Guys, I mean, why can't you just be a team and play AAA? And
exactly. What maybe that is just the level of player that we have,
we might be just a AAA team.
Exactly.
And I'm okay with that.
I mean,
we're never going to have potential for a record like we did when we were AA or anything, because we have to play all the open tournaments and we have to play so many of the major teams. I'm not being, oh, woe is me. I'm just being honest about our kids. We do not have tryouts every season and kick off our 2 worst players.
Exactly.
We don't do that. We've stuck together since we were 9, and that's how we want to do it. Is there right or wrong? There's probably places for both. I just wish there were a few more opportunities to have tournaments without major teams in them. Or in this scenario, let's kind of keep an eye on guest playing so that a AAA team doesn't become a major team just because a coach needs to win because he wasn't hugged enough as a kid. Did I say that?
We're not calling out anyone.
Well, I did, because I mean, there's no reason for a grown man to have to win a baseball game over developing his own kids unless it's an ego issue.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not going to back down from that. I'll tell him that at the home plate tomorrow.
And I mean, ego does come into it for everybody, I think. Like, we all have to check our egos. Like, we all want to win. Note that it is absolutely human nature to want to win. If somebody tells you they don't care about winning, they're lying. Everyone cares about winning.
Oh, I've been there, and that's why sometimes I look back. I'm not a perfect coach or a human being. There's been times where I've been, we probably should have pulled that pitcher. Not because he was over pitch count. It was just obvious it wasn't working, and I should have gone for a development opportunity right then. I mean, there's all these kinds of things where you're like, oh, you don't want to let go of the rope as a coach because exactly. I do want to win. I was very competitive. I played sports. I'm very, I don't like to lose.
And the players don't like to lose. They want to win too.
Yeah.
So that aspect is there. But yeah, I think maybe sometimes you are just a AAA team. And there's nothing that you can do about that except, like you said, kick off some of your worst players and try to go get those pickup players to join your team.
Yeah. Well, we're not going to do that. We're going to stick together, and we're going to fight through it, and we're going to get to where when we do play AAA teams, it's not a question that we win. I'm calling that right now, Charlie. We're going to be that team. And if that happens, I guess then, I think the players could separate that and be okay with it.
Yeah.
But it's a great opportunity to play all those teams as well, because you do figure out what you have to work on. And maybe that in itself will someday, turn it around for us as well. So this isn't about us feeling Debbie Downer about, playing multiple guest playing teams, which really aren't the teams that they say they are on paper, or when they post on Facebook that their team won a tournament and it really wasn't their tournament. I'm not, they can do that, but I just want to bring light to the fact that those aren't the same teams.
Yeah.
And I don't think you and I are the only ones. When you look at the Facebook pages, and I have not just Arkansas, I have them from across the country because I want to try to keep up with this. We're not the only two that feel this way.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that, have teams that are family environment and they want to stick together, and, they're never facing the same teams that they think they are.
And you also hear from a lot of parents who are, upset that their kid's sitting while a guest player plays. I don't think anyone enjoys that. Except the coach.
Accidentally overheard one of those conversations about 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
The mom was letting him have it.
Yeah.
Because she wasn't aware. As she should. Oh my God. And for that organization, the amount of money that they pay,
one of the most expensive in the area.
No, ma'am.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this is one of those things, Charlie, I don't think we can solve, but it is interesting to talk about. I'd be curious if I think there's a few comments about some things on our Facebook page that some people were starting to post. I mean, feel free to go there and add on after you listen to this. If I can learn something and you can convince me why it's the greatest thing ever to just add players to win games and set your own kids, then, have at it. Try to be open-minded enough to at least listen, agree to to disagree, have a nuanced conversation. I'm capable of that. Something tells me you're not going to change my mind, but I'll listen. Yeah.
I think people are going to be in the comments telling us that we just need to get better.
Get better. Yeah, you just need to get better.
We're trying.
We're trying.
Trying our best.
Yeah.
They're going to say, don't worry about who's on the other side of the field.
And they're right about that. You can't. You just got to. We got to line up and play. And who knows? We've beaten a major team before. And again, this podcast did not intend to. We did not intend to start talking about our baseball team, but we were just talking because it's. We've just noticed it more.
Yeah, we're much more concerned about it from a parent perspective, from a coach perspective, from you're trying to coach a kid and he never takes a break.
Yeah.
That's another thing is we sit and make the schedule at the beginning of the season, especially in the spring when teams are doing 10, 12, 14 tournaments already. The coaches strategically building in some rest periods and some weekend practices to get better.
We strategically correct. We strategically make our schedule in the spring because we know it's long and we're playing more the older we get. And when there's a break, that's a break for the kid. It's a break for the families, but it's a break for the kid, and it's a break for the kid physically and mentally. I mean, it really is.
It's not an opportunity to go play some more baseball.
One of our parents was talking to a guy at the end of last spring, and the guy said, "Yeah, my son played every single weekend this spring."
Yeah, that's crazy.
And he was on a team that played a lot, and that every weekend they didn't play. He didn't go to practice. He went out and played. And, I don't know what's going on in other people's lives. There could be a lot of reasons that maybe the kid just doesn't want to be at home, or there's some, family issues. I'm not going to,
Or maybe he is that really rare kid that that's going to work for him and be positive for him. I can tell you that wouldn't work for my kid.
Yeah, and maybe so, but is that right for his arm?
No, for sure.
Is it right to take a weekend off and be an adult in the room and go, son, we're going to stay away from baseball this week, and you're going to want to do it that much more the following weekend. It's a grind out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I love it, Dad. I love it.
Yeah, we're going to develop some other hobbies.
I love you too. That's why we're not going to do it.
Exactly.
Instead of, he's just forcing my arm. He wants to play every single weekend. Because I think physically, mentally it can be hard on a kid, but physically, you're not supposed to be doing, because those kids normally are pitchers as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Or playing the high stress.
I get it. I like watching my kid play baseball. It's really fun. But I know that he also needs time to hang out with his friends and go fishing and sit in his room and read or whatever else you're going to do. You got to have time for that too.
Yeah. Well, I guess we'll just have to get better, Charlie.
We'll just have to get better. So we don't care if the other team has guest players.
Well, we can't face it like that. And we haven't all fall, but almost every team we played this fall has been full of guest players. And it's just interesting because it's like, our kids get it, and they're like, that's not really the team that we're going to play in the spring, or that's not the team that we played last spring. That's not really their team.
Yeah.
It's just
once I'd like to face a team that has a guest player that's the worst player.
I think that would be a 9-person roster, and they were desperate to fill it.
And it was the worst player, yeah.
Maybe that would be in the spirit.
I've never seen that. That's never happened.
Never happened. Oh well. Okay.
Yeah, let us know on Facebook if you're all for it.
Let us know if you're all for it. Tell me how wrong I am.
Yeah.
I'll listen.
For sure.
Call me anything you want. It's all good. I'm going to go to bed tonight as a grown man and not get too caught up if we win a 12-year-old baseball this weekend. So sorry, it's not going to affect me if we win or lose.
Or let us know if you got a really good player who can help us out this weekend.
Oh, Charlie, we're not doing that. Charlie,
be sure to post a video of him striking everybody out.
Yeah.
If he throws 70 plus, he's in.
Whoa, wait, would you say 70? We might have room for that. No. See, it's alluring, isn't it? It's alluring.
If he can hit bombs and throw 70, yeah. Come on, he can hit fourth.
Interested what y'all think? Let us know. Find us on Facebook, and we'll see you at the ballpark.